Dr. Tariq Banori, Coordinator General Comstack, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, Assalamu alaikum. This is an occasion which is very dear to me, and a project which is very dear to me, and a direction which Pakistan and the Islamic countries should take being very dear to me. So therefore, I would like to think of the motivation which I can place before Your Excellencies. At the same time, the urge in the changing world for Muslim countries and other countries to come on board. The fourth industrial revolution, as elaborated by a number of people, including Karl Schwab, and my work looking at the fact that there is going to be enormous changes in science and technology, the progress which will happen, the data which is available in the world is huge. The capacity for man to analyze data is very limited. Man realized his ability to absorb information from observation over a period of millennia. The first geopositioning GPS system was not the GPS satellite, but the geopositioning from the stars. Man observed, looked up, understood the position of the poles, the North Star, the Pole Star, and started navigation. The first harnessing of energy was the wind energy through sails. And it did not require a Pythagoras to run naked in the streets of his city shouting Eureka, but man realized that anything lighter than water, like wood and buoyancy, and what he observed, he could not put the scientific principles behind it, but he started using facts from his observation. But then came better learning, better understanding of issues, and the philosophers started looking at areas which could be understood as 2 + 2, 4, and beyond. And I am indebted to my mother whenever I talk about that. I am indebted to my mother, who forced on me the dialogues of Plato and Aristotle's writings, and then the fact that as more I studied philosophy, I realized that the church and institutions refused to believe the fact that the world is round and insisted on the Aristotelian science of the world being flat. And the struggle which the church went through, for example, with Galileo, and with trying to absorb information, that is nothing compared to the struggle which mankind would be going through today. The first industrial revolution brought a big change with the steam engine, but with the harnessing of power to take over the raw labor which man could put in and multiplying it manifold. The second industrial revolution, and that the first one led to, and it happened in England mostly, the first one led to establishment of factories and establishment of mass production of stuff. The second industrial revolution, for example, with electricity and further harnessing of power and automation and mass production. And all these revolutions happened over decades. And the third industrial revolution happened over a shorter period of time. And that was the ability to communicate, the internet, the cell phone. But the fourth industrial revolution, my friends, is happening in terms of not even a full decade, in terms of 2, 3, 4, 5 years. And that is the data which we have accumulated and the understanding of that data. And I think this is the best occasion for the Muslim world, for the Muslim scientists, for Comstack, for Organization of Islamic Countries, and our friends, not necessarily limited to followers of Islam, and for the world in general, to be able to board that train now. And what is needed is not brick and mortar. What is needed is not money, and what is needed is not funds. Let's disassociate from that feeling. To establish a factory, you need to plan, you need brick and mortar, you need investments to brought in. Here we are talking about uplifting the minds of the people, minds of our youth, opening broad horizons to them. It is remarkable, as the more you would look into that, the more you will understand that how easy it is and how quickly this must be done. So as soon as I assumed this position of responsibility, and I was reading a number of books on artificial intelligence, for example, and the third and the fourth industrial revolution, I thought that Pakistan needs to export stuff. Now, this motivation which I am going to give for you is to be taken to your countries. Pakistan needs to improve its exports, and we are doing everything which is needed for that. But at the same time, I realized whether His Excellency the Ambassador of Indonesia is here. I read a figure that in 2016 the software exports of Indonesia were around $6 or $7 billion. In 2018 it was more than $20 billion. And this did not happen with brick and mortar, this happened with the minds. We educate people. Educating people, for example, when my uncle was doing his PhD in the US on maths, and I used to say, how would maths help you earn a living? He said, I'm fond of maths. And that was it. But finally, today we find that if we can take our youth towards these simplistic things, I think there can be a very big change. What I have started doing, for example, and I want you to emulate within your countries, give the passion to the people that this is a prescription or uplifting our societies from scratch in a very short span of time with little investment. So it's the best thing to do. So what I did, for example, I started the Presidential Initiative on Artificial Intelligence and Computing. And what I thought was, while I was coming into these elections, I met people from the software houses of Pakistan, and I understood one thing. What Pakistan is producing in the software industry, the graduates we are producing, the need of the market was slightly different. So I decided, as this responsibility with me, that I must try and fill that gap, number one. And Mr. Tariq Banori from the Higher Education Commission is here. We would be looking at the courses of the universities, that what is your syllabus, what are you teaching, what is your goal, and at the same time what is the demand of the market. Sometimes there is a vacuum. You see, for example, in vocational training, or for example, the business and industry, we who have been in research, and I have written a few theses in my life, when we are in the ivory towers, we do research not related to the business and the application of research, but today I think the application of research in these areas is much more important. So I thought that the first thing we must do, and I looked at China. In China, keep that in mind, my friends from all over the world and from the Organization of Islamic Countries, keep in mind the fact that if you want to do poverty alleviation, for which Pakistan is a prime candidate, is working hard on poverty alleviation, and everywhere where there are huge number of population, we look at the population bomb, try to understand that and hold it, but at the same time we have to uplift people. So wherever there is poverty, money is not the solution. The solution is trying to give them security as far as health is concerned, and trying to give them education so that they can uplift themselves. That's the solution. That's how China came out of poverty. So Pakistan, I believe, has to do that. Then when I look, because I have been a physician, I am a dentist, have been a practicing dentist, I looked at the fact that what did they do regarding health. So they realized that producing a doctor, for example, takes 5, 6, 7 years of education. But the need is much bigger than trying to produce doctors for 5 or 6 years. So they went into barefoot doctors, if you remember. It happened in the 80s and 90s. They went into barefoot doctors. What they did, that the needs of the society, they trained doctors or nurses within a single year and sent them out to improve general health. They looked at sanitation, they looked at cleanliness, and they looked at prevention, and they tried to improve the health of the country through that process. So the same concept I am trying to do. I am in the 100,000 artificial intelligence students we intend to generate within 1 year. I decided that we could put up from metric, which is a level where they go into degrees and bachelors and masters, pick up children from metric and intermediate, and within 1 year of 52 weeks of courses, bring them into barefoot doctors in software and artificial intelligence and technology. There is such a desperate need for these experts. Like I mentioned, the amount of data is tremendous. The amount of data, for example, the telescopes are producing cannot be handled by the availability of modern technology. The amount of data crunching, for example, give you an example. If some of you would remember the Deep Blue computer which was produced by IBM and it battled Garry Kasparov, who was the grandmaster of chess in the year 2000, I think, and that was a big battle, and we thought that computers will finally take over. But that was a data crunching simple computer which was doing about 3.7 millions of calculations per second. Now what happens, I want you to understand where science is going. What happened this year, in fact, AlphaGo, a computer which based on neurological approach of synapses and connections which happen in the brain, doing 70,000 calculations per second, defeated all, and it learnt itself. You know the difference between the first computer and this one, that all chess programs were fed into it, whatever was played ever was fed into it, and from that example it battled Garry Kasparov. This computer, what it did, it was just given the simple principles of how to play chess and a very famous game which is practiced in China, which is Go. And it battled itself, it learned against itself, and within 7 hours of battling itself, learning from basic principles of how to play chess, it defeated all the data crunching computer. 70,000 calculations per second versus millions of calculations per second. So what I am saying is, this is an opportunity. The train is ready, not only in this area, but in all areas. Science and technology, you are sitting let me give you some figures, 1.6 billion people, 1.6 billion Muslims in the world, producing 6% of scientific articles, doesn't match, producing 1.5% of the patents in the world, have produced 3 Nobel laureates, giving only 2.4% of global research and development. We have much more potential than that. Imagine, so it's not a question of money. There is plenty of wealth in the Muslim world. So my presentation to you today is looking at a vision, a broader vision, and in a narrow spectrum of time, to be able to achieve what generations have tried to do. So my intention is, my friends, to motivate the Islamic world. It can lift itself from its bootstraps. We have enough wealth to be able to do that, but more than wealth, we need a vision to be able to take us out from whatever is happening. The world is changing. Quantum computers, for example, you can't even imagine what computers do today and what quantum computers would do tomorrow. And I think that rather than brick and mortar, I think whatever has been mentioned by Mr. Tariq Benori, I subscribe to all that. In the traditional science and technology, I want all of the Muslim countries to cooperate. Pakistan is there. Pakistan is ready to do all the cooperative programs which you can come up with, but at the same time, I would like you to open up in the newer field, the 4th industrial generation. And I was reading a book by Kai-Fu Lee on the changes happening in the world, and he mentioned the fact that there is such a desperate fight going on who will lead this, and it is so easy to pick it up. And it's not, the Chinese, for example, have been looking at copyright, emulating Facebook, emulating Twitter, emulating WhatsApp in days, and then with a huge population, we have a 1.4 billion of the marketplace. And the companies which have started looking at science and technology as a support system and the database have taken over oil. For example, the top 10 in Fortune, top 10 companies by Fortune 500 used to be Mobil, Exxon, oil-based companies. Today the top 10 are Microsoft, Apple, Amazon, Tencent, Alibaba, Google. Why? Only because, you look at Uber for example, you look at Kareem for example, they are just handling data, they are not producing anything, they may have an office, but beyond that they don't have a factory. It's just the ability to look at data and try and handle it. As cheap as that, as easy as that, as brilliant as that. And therefore, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to urge you, in your countries, go back to your countries, motivate your leaders to look into these aspects, easily done, and jump on the bandwagon of the new change which is happening. I support whatever has been mentioned here. ComStack is, and I thank the support which ComStack is receiving from other OIC organs, especially the Islamic Development Bank. And ComStack is not a Pakistan-based thing. It was established by the Organization of Islamic Countries, and it is a Committee on Science and Technology. So it is receiving good help from the Islamic Educational, Scientific and Cultural Organization, from the Statistical, Economic and Social Research and Training Center, and the Standing Committee for Economic and Commercial Cooperation of the Organization of the Islamic Countries. But the biggest help is changing our own mindset. The biggest help of those people who are attending this occasion, the biggest help you can do is trying to change direction within our countries towards science and technology. In Urdu we say, Baroness Saida Wasif just presented her book to me, and she was talking about the fact that we've always heard that the Muslims did this, Muslims did that. An algorithm, for example, is Al-Khwarizmi's Latinization of his name into algorithms. But in Urdu we say Pidram Sultan Bood, means that my parents and my genealogy goes towards people who are kings. That is a good hereditary situation which we have, starting from a good background. But at the same time, being Pidram Sultan Bood and being ready for the world tomorrow is the challenge which is much more severe for the Muslim countries than any other nation. We are devastated with wars, we are devastated, but with a huge population looking at a futuristic scenario today. And I thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for listening to me with the patience, and I urge you to grab this, what you have got today, for a new world tomorrow. Thank you very much.
ऐवान सदर में OIC के ममालिक